The shriek that came through my phone wasn't one of pain or fear. It was the sound of pure, undiluted entitlement crashing against the cold wall of reality. "What do you mean, the sale is final?" My mother's voice was a ragged saw blade against my ear. "Lachlan, you have to do something. We'll be on the street. Your own mother and father." I leaned my forehead against the cool glass of my office window, looking down at the city lights twinkling into existence as dusk settled. My pulse was steady. My breathing was even. For the first time in my life, her hysteria didn't touch me. It was like listening to a storm raging miles away. I let her shrieking devolve into desperate, gasping sobs before I spoke, my voice unnervingly calm. "I'm sorry, Mom. But issues like this," I paused, letting the weight of the moment hang in the air between us. "They're for family only, remember." I ended the call. To understand the peace I felt as I sentenced my parents to homelessness, you need to understand the 6 weeks that led to this moment. My name is Lachlan, I'm 31 years old, and I used to be a very, very good son. My family's perception of me was a carefully constructed caricature, one I had foolishly helped them paint. To them, I was latchy, the quiet, nerdy son who played on his computer all day. They knew I worked as a remote tech consultant, but the term was so vague, so intangible, that they filed it under hobby that somehow pays bills. They never asked for details. They didn't care. They only cared that when a credit card bill became overwhelming or a car needed a sudden, expensive repair, a quiet transfer of funds from my account would magically make the problem disappear. Just last month, we'd all gathered for my father's 60th birthday dinner at a steakhouse he liked. I paid for the table, of course. My sister, Bronwyn, for years my senior and the undisputed golden child, was holding court. She was a high school history teacher, a real, respectable career, as my mother, Deirdre, was fond of saying. Mrs. Albright is finally retiring, so they've given me her 2 senior AP classes for next year, Bronwyn announced, beaming. "Oh, darling, that's wonderful." Deirdre gushed, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "Warren, did you hear that? Our daughter, shaping the minds of the next generation." My father, Warren, grunted his approval. "That's my girl. A real contribution." He then glanced at me, a dismissive wave in his eyes. "Must be nice playing on your computer all day, Latchy. No real-world stress." I just smiled, a tight, practiced motion that didn't reach my eyes, and picked at my asparagus. The sting of their words had long ago faded into a dull, familiar ache. This was my role in the family portrait, the blurry figure in the background, the checkbook that funded the frame. This wasn't a new dynamic. My life was a museum of their casual dismissals, and I was the lonely curator. I remember when I was 16, buzzing with the thrill of creation. I had spent 6 months learning to code, and I'd finally built a simple but functional program, a piece of software to organize and track comic book collections. It was clunky, but it was mine. I ran to the living room, my laptop in hand, my heart pounding with a desperate need for his approval. "Dad, look. Look what I made." He glanced up from the football game on TV, his eyes barely focusing on the lines of code on my screen. "That's nice, son," he'd mumbled, his attention already drifting back to the roar of the crowd from the speakers. He turned the volume up. I stood there for a full minute, the glow of the screen illuminating my crestfallen face, before quietly closing the laptop and retreating to my room. The silent message was clear: my world, my passions, were of no interest to him. Years later, after I'd received my first major payout from the sale of my actual software company, a fact they remained blissfully unaware of, I found out my parents were drowning in $15,000 of credit card debt. Without a second thought, I transferred the full amount to their account. My mother's text message came an hour later: "Thanks." That was it. A week later, I was on the phone with my fiancée, Thea, when I overheard Deirdre in the background, talking loudly to my Aunt Shirley. Oh, it was so stressful, Deirdre sighed dramatically, but Bronwyn was our rock. Her emotional support truly saved us. It was as if my money, my tangible help, was nothing more than an anonymous ATM withdrawal. Even my home, the one I shared with Thea, was a source of their backhanded compliments. "It's a lovely little place, Lachlan," my mother had said during her first visit, her eyes scanning my minimalist decor with a hint of pity. "So cozy. It's a good thing you have such a stable landlord who doesn't raise the rent. You'd never be able to afford a place like Bronwyn's." I just nodded. I didn't tell her that the stable landlord was me. I didn't tell her that I owned the entire building. There was no point. It was information they wouldn't know what to do with. Despite the endless parade of small cuts and large wounds, a foolish, stubborn part of me still craved their approval. A part of me believed that if I could just make one grand gesture, one undeniable act of love and generosity, the scales would fall from their eyes and they would finally see me. Their 35th wedding anniversary was the perfect opportunity. I didn't just book a trip. I curated an experience. For weeks, I researched, planned, and obsessed over every detail. This wouldn't be some budget vacation package. This would be the trip of a lifetime, a memory so perfect it would be impossible to dismiss. I booked 5 first-class, lie-flat seats on a direct flight to Maui. I reserved the Ali'i Royal Suite at the Four Seasons, a sprawling, 3-bedroom oceanfront paradise with a private lanai. I arranged for private tours, a luau on the beach, and dinner reservations at the most exclusive restaurant on the island. The total cost came to just over $22,000. I printed everything: the flight confirmations, the hotel reservations, the tour itineraries, and placed them in a heavy, cream-colored presentation folder. When I presented it to them during our Sunday dinner, the reaction was everything I had hoped for. My mother's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes welling up with tears. My father was speechless, turning the pages of the itinerary over and over as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Lachlan. I don't know what to say," Warren stammered, his voice thick with emotion. Deirdre rushed over and wrapped me in a tight, theatrical hug, her tears dampening my shirt. "Oh, Lachlan, you are the most wonderful son a mother could ask for," she sobbed. "We didn't know you could do something like this." Even Bronwyn, for once, seemed genuinely impressed, looking over the details with wide eyes. In that moment, a warmth spread through my chest, a dangerous, addictive feeling I mistook for acceptance. I felt seen. I felt valued. I thought, this is it. This is the moment everything changes. I was a fool. The change was subtle at first. In the weeks following the big reveal, the family group chat was buzzing with excitement. But as the departure date drew closer, a strange quiet descended. It started a week before we were set to leave. I sent a text asking about packing lists and last-minute details. My mother's reply, hours later, was a terse, "So busy. We'll call later." She never did. I tried calling my dad the next day, it went straight to voicemail. Bronwyn's texts became one-word answers. "Something feels off, Lachlan," Thea said one evening, looking up from her book. She had always been the clear-eyed observer of my family's dysfunction, the one who saw the red flags I so desperately tried to ignore. "They're being too quiet." "It's weird." "They're just excited and busy, babe," I replied, trying to convince myself as much as her. "It's a big trip. Mom's probably running around like crazy." "She's never too busy for a 3-hour phone call with Bronwyn about what shoes to pack," Thea countered gently. "Just, be careful, okay?" I waved her concerns away, but a seed of unease had been planted. By the time we were 3 days out from the flight, the silence was deafening. My calls were now being actively ignored. My texts were left on read. Panic began to coil in my stomach. Were they sick? Had something happened? My mind raced through a dozen disastrous scenarios, each one more unlikely than the last. The one possibility my brain refused to compute was the truth. The day before we were supposed to fly out, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove over to their house, a knot of anxiety tightening in my chest. Their cars were gone. The house was dark. A neighbor watering his lawn saw me and waved. "Hey, Lachlan. Looking for your folks?" he asked cheerfully. "You just missed them. They left for the airport a couple of days ago. Looked like they were heading somewhere tropical." The world tilted on its axis. The neighbor's friendly words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. It didn't make sense. We were supposed to leave tomorrow. Together. I stumbled back to my car, my hands shaking as I fumbled for my phone. I dialed my mother's number again. This time, to my shock, she answered. Her voice was tanned. That's the only way I can describe it. It was relaxed, happy, and carried the lazy warmth of the sun. "Lachlan. Hi, sweetie. Is everything okay?" she chirped, the sound of gentle waves lapping in the background. My own voice was a dry croak. "Mom. Where are you?" I went by the house. "Oh, we're in Hawaii, of course. It's absolutely divine," she said, as casually as if she were telling me she was at the grocery store. "You should see the view from our suite." The ground fell away beneath me. "What are you talking about?" "The flight is tomorrow." "Our flight." There was a brief pause, a rustle on the other end of the line. Then a new voice, sharp and smug, cut in. It was Bronwyn. "Look, Lachlan, just relax," she said, her tone dripping with the condescending venom she reserved just for me. "We decided to come a week early. It worked out better for our schedules." "Our schedules?" I was sputtering, my mind struggling to catch up with the sheer audacity. "But I planned it for all of us. I paid for." She cut me off with a sigh that was pure performance, the sigh of someone burdened by another's foolishness. "Listen," she said, and I could practically hear the eye roll. "It was a family-only trip. You know, for the actual family." The emphasis was a deliberate, twisting knife. "We gave your ticket to Kevin. It just made more sense to have him here with me and the kids. It's a couple's thing. You get it. Don't be so dramatic about it. For the actual family." The words echoed in the sudden, ringing silence of my car. It wasn't just that they had gone without me. It wasn't just that they had changed the dates. They had taken my gift, my $22,000 olive branch, and used it to formally excommunicate me. They had replaced me with someone else and declared that I was not, and had never been, part of the inner circle. I wasn't family. I was just the sponsor. I don't remember saying goodbye. I think I just said, "Oh," in a small, dead voice, and the line went silent. I ended the call. For a long time, I just sat there in my car, parked on the quiet suburban street in front of the empty house. I didn't rage. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. A strange, terrifying calm washed over me, a clarity so sharp it felt like a shard of ice in my chest. All the years of hoping, of trying, of swallowing their dismissals and convincing myself that their love was just around the corner, it all collapsed in on itself, turning to dust. The museum of pain I had so carefully curated in my mind finally closed its doors for good. I saw them for what they were. Not complicated, not misunderstood. Just users. Parasites who cloaked their greed in the language of family. And I was the host. I drove home in silence. Thea was waiting for me, her face etched with concern. She saw my expression and knew immediately. She didn't say, "I told you so." She just wrapped her arms around me. After a moment, I stepped back. The grief was still there, a hollow ache where a family used to be, but it was now overlaid with something new, a cold, hard sense of purpose. I walked into my home office and sat down at my desk. My movements were deliberate, precise. I opened my laptop, entered a password, and navigated to an encrypted folder on my hard drive labeled LLC Holdings. Inside were the legal documents, property deeds, and management agreements for my real estate portfolio. I found the file for the house on Elm Street. My parents' house. My house. I composed a new email. The recipient was Mr. Graves, the professional, no-nonsense manager of my property company. The subject line was simple. Subject: Notice of non-renewal and intent to sell property, 124 Elm Street. The body of the email was even simpler. Mr. Graves, please proceed with serving the 30-day notice to the tenants at the above address. The property is to be listed for sale immediately. Thank you. Lachlan. I hit send. As the email vanished from my outbox, a single, hot tear traced a path down my cheek. It wasn't a tear of sadness. It was a tear of release. The good son was finally dead. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking with the story so far. If you're enjoying it, please take a second to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know what city you're watching from in the comments below. Every comment really helps the story reach more people. Thank you so much, and let's get back to it. The 30 days that followed were the quietest, most peaceful month of my adult life. I implemented a policy of absolute zero contact. I blocked Deirdre, Warren, and Bronwyn on my phone, on social media, on every conceivable platform. Their panicked, then angry, then pleading voicemails piled up in a digital graveyard I had no intention of visiting. Life went on. Thea and I took a weekend trip to a vineyard, drank wine, and talked about our future. We cooked together, we laughed, and for the first time, my phone wasn't a ticking time bomb of familial obligation waiting to explode. I felt light. Meanwhile, on another planet called Facebook, Bronwyn was performing the final act of her vacation theater. She posted a sprawling album of professionally edited photos. There they were, the actual family, all smiles and sun-kissed skin. Bronwyn and her husband Kevin, clinking champagne glasses at sunset. My parents, looking 10 years younger, wrapped in lace. The caption was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive poison. Soaking up the last moments in paradise with the people who matter most. A trip like this reminds you what real family is all about. Feeling so blessed. #family first, #making memories, #Hawaii. Old me would have felt a spear of jealousy and pain. New me felt nothing but a distant, clinical pity. They were celebrating on a sinking ship, completely unaware that I was the one who had just pulled the plug. A week into the countdown, I received a notification from Mr. Graves. Notice of non-renewal has been legally served and signed for by the tenant, Deirdre. The first ripple had reached them. I imagined the scene, the confusion, the indignation. They would have assumed it was just their faceless landlord being unreasonable. Their first calls, I knew, would have been to me, their fixer, their bank. But when their calls met only the void of a blocked number, confusion would have started to curdle into a low-grade panic. They were on their own, a concept so foreign to them it might as well have been a different language. The storm broke on day 28. My phone rang with an unknown number. I knew who it was. I let it ring 4 times, then answered and put it on speaker for Thea to hear. The shriek that came through my phone was the one you heard at the beginning of this story. The sound of pure, undiluted entitlement crashing against the cold wall of reality. Lachlan. Finally. We've been trying to reach you for weeks. It was Deirdre, her voice tight with panic. The landlord is selling the house. He's throwing us out. We have to be out in 2 days. We have nowhere to go. She took a breath, and the panic was replaced by the familiar tone of command. "I've found a new rental, but they need first month, last month, and a security deposit. It's $6,000. I need you to transfer the money. Now. Not can you. Not please. I need you to." I let the silence stretch, savoring the weight of it. Thea gave my hand a supportive squeeze. "My duty?" I asked, my voice calm and even. I was under the impression I wasn't family. The other end of the line went completely silent. I could hear her sharp, shocked intake of breath. What are you talking about?" she stammered. "It was a family-only trip, I believe was the phrase," I continued, the words flowing like ice water. "Security deposits, moving trucks, finding a new place to live, that sounds like a job for the actual family." Bronwyn made that very clear. Deirdre's shock quickly morphed into sputtering rage. "How dare you? How dare you throw that in my face after everything we've done for you? This is about your father and me being homeless, you selfish, ungrateful brat." "You shouldn't be yelling at me," I said, cutting through her tirade. "You should be speaking to the owner of the property directly." "How am I supposed to do that?" she shrieked. "We don't even know who he is." I paused, letting the final piece of the puzzle click into place for her. I let her hang there, suspended in her own ignorance, for one last, delicious second. "You're doing it right now." I hung up the phone. The silence that filled my office was absolute. The fallout was swift and spectacular. The first wave was the flying monkeys. Aunt Shirley called, her voice dripping with manufactured sympathy. "Lachlan, your mother is beside herself. How could you be so cruel? She said you bought the house just to throw them out." "That's not true, Aunt Shirley," I said calmly. "I bought the house 5 years ago to keep them from being evicted when their old landlord sold up. They just never knew." That shut her up. The second wave was an incoherent, typo-riddled email from Warren, oscillating wildly between begging me to reconsider and threatening to, well, I wasn't sure what. It was mostly just angry noise. I forwarded it to Mr. Graves with the note, "For your records." The final wave, the one that mattered, was a call from my Uncle Finn, my dad's younger brother. He was a straight-talking mechanic who had always treated me with a gruff kindness that felt more genuine than my own father's forced affection. "Your mom called me," he said, skipping the pleasantries. "Gave me some crazy story about you becoming a slumlord." I took a deep breath and, for the first time, told a family member everything. The years of being an ATM. The constant dismissal. The $22,000 trip to Hawaii. The phone call from Bronwyn. Finn was quiet on the other end of the line for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with an emotion I couldn't place. "Lachlan," he said, and he sounded prouder than my own father ever had. "I've been watching them treat you like a doormat for 20 years. I was just waiting for the day you'd finally see it too. Don't you dare feel guilty. I'm damn proud of you." That was the only validation I needed. There was one last message. A long, rambling text from Bronwyn, filled with accusations and self-pity. It ended with a final, desperate jab. "I can't believe you'd destroy our family over one stupid vacation." I looked at the text on my screen. I looked at Thea, who was sitting beside me, her presence a silent, solid support. The old Lachlan would have felt a pang of guilt. He would have wondered if he had gone too far. But the old Lachlan was gone. I began to type. My reply was short, precise, and engineered to deliver the final, devastating truth. "It was never about the vacation, Bronwyn. It was about the 5 years you all lived in my house, paying 30% below market rate, while you still treated me like I owed you the world. By the way, don't worry about the eviction." I let her feel a flicker of hope for a single second before I typed the last sentence. "The house is already sold. The sale closes on Tuesday. Good luck. I hit send and blocked her number for the last time. It's been 2 months. Thea and I are packing up our own apartment now, preparing to move to a new state for a fresh start. There is no contact from my former family. Uncle Finn told me they moved into a small, cramped apartment an hour away. I feel no triumph, no anger. Just a quiet, expansive freedom. I lost the family I was born with, but in doing so, I finally found myself. They are telling anyone who will listen that I am a monster for evicting my own family after they stole from me and disowned me. So, Reddit, I have to ask. Am I the asshole? Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you made it this far, please consider hitting the like button, sharing this video with a friend who might enjoy it, and subscribing to the channel for more stories like this one. Your support means the world. Thank you again.